Well, good evening and welcome. I feel much more relaxed this time than I did last time. Those of you who were here at the first one will remember that one of our main speakers from Copenhagen forgot to pack his passport, so didn't show up. That was a little traumatic. But today we've had no problems because no one's needed a passport to get into Liverpool. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second seminar in our 2014 Engage seminar series dedicated to influencing both the debate and the decisions about movement and connectivity in Liverpool's city centre. We encourage you to use Twitter tonight to share what is happening here with others who want to follow what is being said. So we're at Engage Liverpool and the event is #OnTheMove. And welcome to the third incarnation of this wonderful building. The restored Grade 2 listed former warehouse, previously used for the storage of cotton, spices and coffee, and derelict for many years, before being renovated by the Nova Scarman Group as the contemporary urban centre, focusing on culture and the arts, which sadly closed down during a restructuring of the group. It was then that North Liverpool Academy successfully bid to take over the building as an educational establishment for 14 to 19-year-olds. 7 Streets welcomed the initiative at the time, reporting, and I quote, "And with the Academy's forward-thinking business and enterprise-focused learning, it's wiser to think of this institution not as a school implanted into the cool corner of town, but of a hothouse nurturing Liverpool's digital economy of the future. And that's joined-up thinking we should all support." Well, tonight we're doing some more joined-up thinking at the level of urban transport and mobility infrastructure. We welcome to Liverpool representatives from 3 great cities in England, Nottingham, Bristol and London, to see what we can learn from the initiatives being implemented to respond to the changing times for movement and connectivity in the urban environment. In the first seminar of this series, we were treated to a wonderful exposition about the developments that have taken place in Copenhagen over a long period of time. And we heard of the lessons they've learned and are keen to share, particularly around urban design, public open space, walking and pavement culture, cycling, and its required infrastructure. As Oliver Schultz said, and I quote, "I believe that streets are the key bearers of shared urban culture in human settlement. So for a great urban everyday life in the future, we need to start building better streets." Klaus Bondum, who should have shown up and was the politician responsible for many of the transformations in Copenhagen, has said, "The toughest decision is when you have to reduce parking places to make a bicycle lane. I usually describe it as the cultural value battle of the cities. The car is the symbol of personal and individual freedom. And in our democratic societies, when we feel that somebody touches our individual freedoms, we feel insecure, we get pressed, and that creates some quite big confrontations politically." Tonight we're going to hear from Chris Carter, who is at the end of the nearest table, who works with Nottingham City Council. Next to him, Alistair Cox, who works at Bristol City Council, and Bruce McVean, who founded Movement for a Liveable London and is a trustee of Living Streets and an associate director of Beyond Green. Each will speak for about 15 minutes, and then we shall hear briefly from our panellists, who are tonight Councillor Liam Robinson, who is in the centre, who is chair of Mersey Travel, Andy Barr, who is on his right as we look at him, the divisional manager for highways and transportation at Liverpool City Council, and nearest to me, Alice Irvine from Sustrans, which is a charity dedicated to changing how we move around cities. Sustrans have set themselves a huge challenge. that by 2020 they want to see 4 out of 5 local journeys made by bike, foot or public transport. That's going to be challenging. I know that I came away last time with a strong feeling that we need to have the clarity of vision and the sheer political determination we saw in Copenhagen if Liverpool is to become the city that many of us here would like to see. But tonight we're about to take a look at the national picture and see what is happening in Bristol, Nottingham and London. I'm keen to see what's being done and why these places are being spoken about nationally as exemplar cities for aspects of their mobility strategy. London, of course, is different from all other cities in the country. Spending per head of population on transport infrastructure in London is £5,426, compared with 223 in the northeast and 599 in the northwest. That's why we didn't invite anyone from Transport for London to come here, but an organisation set up in 2011 to address residents' concerns about prioritising how that money is being spent. I'm sure Bruce won't be defending the unacceptable inequalities in our London-centric country. Before I invite our first speaker, I want to thank tonight our sponsors who have made this series possible. Curtains, Planet Intelligent Environments, the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation, and Liverpool City Council. Can I invite you to welcome our first speaker, Chris Carter.
Hello everyone. As Jerry, thank you very much for that very warm welcome, and thank you very much for inviting me to your city to present a little bit about what we've been doing in Nottingham and some of the things that some of our plans for the future. Oh, other way. Just a little bit about me. I started work for the City Council back in 1998. And my current responsibility is for developing the transport strategy for the city and also bringing in funding for transport investment. A few stats about Nottingham. Basically, like Liverpool, Nottingham is one of the UK's core cities, but something that's a bit different about Nottingham compared to Liverpool is that Nottingham is actually a unitary authority. This means that all the responsibilities for planning, for transport, public transport, all rest with the City Council rather than any other body. Also in Nottingham, the main principal public transport operator, Nottingham City Transport, is still in public ownership. One other key point, however, is that within Nottingham, the boundary of the city is very constrained. Although the wider population, as that says, is about 1.3 million, only about 300,000 of the population actually is within the city of Nottingham. So that actually does cause some difficulties when it comes to transport planning. Back in the 60s, like many other areas, Nottingham was planning for the car. And we had some grand plans for building new roads. This included proposals for urban motorways, which was all about grade separating junctions and separating the car from everything else. However, by the 70s, notwithstanding the cost and the land take required to build such new roads, it was being realised that actually that the unfettered growth of the car was not necessarily the best way forward. What emerged then was an alternative, which was actually known as zones and collars. The principle of this was providing a ring of park and ride facilities around the outside of the city, and then using traffic signals to actually control the flow of traffic into the city centre, and using bus priority to speed buses past and get them into the city centre. The problem, however, was that people began to ignore the traffic lights, and just when there was nothing to stop them, they just went through the traffic lights, and soon the scheme fell into disrepute and actually had to be abandoned. In many ways, you could say it was actually ahead of its time. Moving forward to today, Nottingham is still very dependent on its bus network. Over 40% of households still don't have access to a car, but unlike Liverpool, there's no real urban rail network. As a result, we still have about the second highest bus use outside London. Only Brighton has a higher level. But significantly, bus use is actually still growing. What the city has been doing is continue to invest heavily in quality infrastructure. That's been bus priority, real-time systems, integrated ticketing. And that's been matched by our operators who've been investing in vehicles, customer care, route branding and other marketing. And bus use has continued to grow. However, the downside is that potentially there's been too many buses now in some of our areas, and that's becoming increasingly a bit of a challenge in terms of developing the public realm. Obviously, we've also been very successful in terms of attracting investment for our Nottingham Express transit system. This is a tram system that was first constructed in 2004 with the first line, a 14-kilometre line from the city centre to the north that currently carries up to 10 million passengers a year. Phase 2 of the system is the two extensions, one to the west and one to the south, that is currently under construction and due to be completed by early 2015, and will double the capacity of the system to about 20 million passengers per year. The key characteristic of a tram system compared to buses is probably its fixed route, and in terms of attracting investment and public realm, and both in terms of attracting development, we find that actually people want to invest along tram lines in a way that they don't do necessarily with bus routes. And I think that's probably one of the key things to draw out. One thing that's particularly unique to Nottingham is the commitment to deliver a workplace parking levy. This is something that was introduced in 2012 and applies to any employer who has more than 10 commuter parking spaces. Basically, each employer is required to apply for a licence, and they have to pay basically £350 per year to the council per space. There's currently around 500 employers who are liable for this, and that generates an income for the city of around £9 million a year, and that will increase with inflation. That funding is being required in order to generate the local contribution to a £1 billion investment strategy. And that has gone into the complete refurbishment of Nottingham Station, the £100 million contribution to our tram extensions, and for converting our own link bus network to an entire fleet of electric vehicles. And we've now got potentially the largest fleet in Europe of about 60 electric buses operating within the city. Oh, that's well, unfortunately some of the elements haven't come out on that slide, but basically what this slide is trying to show is that it's important to recognise that the workplace parking levy, as well as generating an income for the city, it also has an important influence in change in behaviour, both for individual commuters and for employers. Basically, it makes them think about the way that they use cars and about the actual car parking that is provided. Basically, what this does is create a virtuous circle in many ways in terms of encouraging more use of public transport, reusing car parks for other uses, and again, making employers think about the parking that they provide. This plan here basically is, and sort of looking forward to how these transport policies have influenced the overall look and feel of the city. One example is our inner ring road strategy and how things have changed in the city centre over time. This is actually a plan of the bit of the inner ring road that did get built in the 60s, and you can see is a very sort of hostile environment for pedestrians, cyclists, and public transport users. Totally car dominated. Barriers prevent people from crossing the roads. Really splits the street in half. People are forced to use subways, which are incredibly dingy and feel unsafe. So what we did, this is a scheme we completed about 10 years ago now, which is actually to change the whole nature of that street. And that involved filling in one of the subway areas and converting that to level sort of street crossings with direct pedestrian crossings, taking out one of the traffic lanes, putting in a bus lane, and then landscaping the central area, so taking away the central barriers, putting in landscaping instead to actually soften the way that the road looks. The road still carries the same amount of traffic, but it has changed the way that street looks. Similarly, this is a similar junction where we've basically taken out the subways and replaced them with direct surface crossings and given more priority to pedestrians. This is the northern part of the inner ring road, again where we've actually taken out a traffic lane in this circumstance and actually widened the pavements and got rid of the central barriers and put in some street trees, again to improve the appearance of the street. The tram has also been quite a big catalyst for change, and this is basically this area here. We've taken out the subway, created a new public space, and actually put in new crossings and made a much better space in that area. This scheme here is known as our Turning Point scheme. This was a 12 million scheme involving a major traffic redistribution in the north of the city centre. Basically, traffic was forced further north, with the area that's dotted there translated to become a bus priority area. This actually had a negative cost-benefit ratio, and was one of the few schemes the Department for Transport has actually funded that actually had that, but was approved on the basis that it had much wider economic benefits. Now this is a slide showing what we were expecting in terms of creating a sort of shared use space and with people mixing with buses. The reality is it didn't quite turn out like that. And actually this is where the sort of deregulation of the bus network worked against us, and actually the area has actually become saturated with buses and actually bus infrastructure. So actually some of the objectives that we had there haven't actually come through. However, it has created within the actual heart of Nottingham, enabled us other benefits, so that we've been able to improve the public realm, create a new sort of improved Old Market Square area, and a whole sort of, we created a Cllr zone where we restrict access during the main part of the day between 10 and 4:30, which is totally pedestrian priority, and this area has been a much greater success and is now a sort of centrepiece for the city, so that has been a great success. The challenge ahead is now to address some of the other parts of the city centre and apply some sort of similar treatments. Anyone arriving in Nottingham will probably be aware that if they turn out of the station and head towards the city centre, at the moment they're currently met with a massive brick wall, which is known as the Broadmarsh Shopping Centre. This is a 1960s concrete monstrosity that sort of blocks the main pedestrian route from the station to the city centre. Now again, what we're trying to do here is looking at actually, can we take out some of the through traffic that currently cuts through the city centre and actually push that further south and create another sort of more bus and pedestrian priority area and cycle priority area in the centre, and push the traffic further out. One of the challenges, and this is something that our leader feels quite passionately about, is actually he wants to actually fully pedestrianise the main route from the station right through to the city centre. And we produced some visuals sort of showing what that might look like and the opportunities for creating a sort of public square outside the station, and undoubtedly that could be incredibly attractive. The problem for us is there's currently about 70 buses an hour that go up and down that street, and actually finding somewhere to reroute them is actually quite a challenge. And that is actually the trade-off that we're being pushed to make, really, is whether or not that transferring that amount of public realm into a fully pedestrianised street versus the, if you like, impact potentially on reliability and accessibility of the public transport network. And that's one of the things that we're currently weighing up. So just a couple of conclusions, really, in terms of how we've got to where we are and perhaps influence what we're doing. I mean, I think very much say that the work in Nottingham has been very much vision-led, and we've produced a plan and sort of stuck to that plan and continued to deliver it. Nottingham has a fairly stable political environment. It's basically currently a Labour authority, and it has been so for many years now. And there's currently, I think, out of 55 councillors, 50 of them are all in the Labour group. So you can see there's a very much stable political environment, which means that they have taken a very long-term view and been prepared to take perhaps some fairly difficult political decisions. The other key thing I think we shouldn't underestimate is that the fact that we're a unitary authority means that we have been forced to look at planning and transport together and properly integrate our planning and transport and actually look at our land use plans and our transport plans together, and I think that's been absolutely critical. So that's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour of our plans, but hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour of what we've been doing.
I'm sure we saw some interesting similarities there with Liverpool, having to deal with a disaster when you walk out of the station, and luckily I took you out of the back entrance today, so you didn't quite get exposed to an atrocious 1960s shopping development straight opposite, which we've wrapped around with some nice plastic to make it look really impressive to visitors. So yeah, and issues around what we do with the buses. Shooting across the front of Lime Street Station, and I'm very keen to see a public piazza area there, which looks wonderful in the planning, but some really hard decisions. So I think, yeah, lots of similarities, and really interesting to see the challenges you've explored in Nottingham. And thanks for not making it look as if it's the perfect city in England. So makes us feel a little bit better here.